Well, now, one of the peculiarities of the Montessori method is that parallel to the reading scheme, we start the study of grammar. Now, grammar is usually a subject that nobody likes, and with us in England, it's a subject that has been very neglected lately. Because it was so unpopular, it was taught later and later, and it's almost got left out of the syllabus, with the result that we have very good students going to the university, and they cannot write concise English or good English, and it's really ridiculous because they Cambridge was, which is our top university for science, was complaining about the standard of written English because the students, when they have done tests and things, cannot put them down on paper in comprehensible language or without errors, you see. So in order to understand and read and write your own language with full comprehension and full appreciation, you must study grammar. You don't read a book appreciating the style of the author unless you are aware of the way he uses words. And each author has a very different style, although he's using the same words. You see? And so we must go back to a detailed study of grammar and again, if you're going to learn a second language, as our children begin to learn French now at quite an early age, you cannot learn another language unless you understand your own grammar, because it's impossible to understand French and putting the adjective usually after the noun, you see, if they don't know that in English the adjective in nearly every case goes in front of the noun. You see, it makes it too hard to study the grammar of a second language if you don't understand the grammar of your own language. Now, we think that if you leave the study of grammar till the children are much older, it's too late, because your reading and your writing habits are already formed. You see? So if you're going to learn to write good English and consciously appreciate the style of an author, write correct English, be able to write concise English, and comprehend every word that you read with full comprehension, then grammar has to be part of the reading scheme. And another thing is that this study of grammar is very boring when you're older, because you are out of the stage of development in which you are so interested in language. The first 6 years of life, nature makes you fascinated with language. If you weren't very, very keen to listen to words, to learn words, to use words, you would never learn to talk. You see, the baby cries when he's only a few days old. He'll cry during the daytime, not because he wants attention, not because he wants to be fed or that he's uncomfortable in any way, but because he simply wants to be picked up and talked to. You see, he doesn't know that language exists, but he wants his mother to pick him up and rock him and pet him and talk to him. And he concentrates very, very hard. In that first year of life, he works tremendously hard, so that by a year of age, he has practiced babbling syllables. He's practiced all the lip, mouth, and tongue movements. You know how they put their tongues in and out, and they work their cheek muscles, and they dribble at that stage, because they are practicing all the movements necessary for speech. See? And they end up with a language. Well, this interest in language continues, so that between 2.5 when language should be complete, that is, they should be speaking in full sentences and syntax should be correct, they go on simply amassing words so that you can use as many words as you like, and the children just absorb them without any explanation. You see, so there's this vital interest in language, and that is why at about 4.5, they go into the reading scheme with such enthusiasm. You see, they are so interested in language that the interest in the spoken language will transfer to the written language. And at this age they are passionately fond of the grammar, you see, because it's the natural age to be interested in language. So, as soon as your children can read the longer phonetic words, you start giving them exercises on the grammar which are phonetic. And it's the noun, the adjective, the verb that we shall add to the phonetic scheme. Naturally, at this age, children are not going to be interested in rules and definitions. It's when they are 7 that they begin to want to know why for everything. They like rules. They want to know the reasons for everything. And it's then they will like the definitions of the parts of speech. So at first, we don't worry them about the definitions. We just give them practice in using words, verbs, adjectives, nouns. You'll see as I go along. But we differentiate each group with a colour. You see? Now all the work on the noun will be on black. And black was chosen because Dr. Montessori thought it suited the noun. It's sort of heavy, immobile. It rather suits a noun, which is static. Now, one of the exercises we can give the child is to give them phonetic words written on black cards. And you use white ink, because white, you can buy little bottles of ink with a small short pen, and it's quite easy to use. And you look round your classroom and you see how many words, objects in your classroom have phonetic names. You think of a few. Desk. Yes. Rug. Pen. Map. No, pencil, no, it's a soft C. Clock. You see? Yes. No, that's AR. Hand. Flag. You very soon find that you've got 20, 30 words. Mug. Pot. You know? Yeah, that you have more words than you realize once you begin to look for them. You'll probably end up with 20 or 30 words. And you put them in a black box. And the box can have a heading card on it which says noun. You see? And all our heading cards are either in buff or grey. Mine are in grey because it was easier to get that coloured paper. A nondescript colour, you see. And the word is written quite clearly. So the box would be labelled noun, and you would just take the box to the child's table, and you would take out the word noun, and you would show him this says noun, and you would put the word noun up at the top of the table, and you don't try and din it into him, you know. You don't have to hit words in with a sledgehammer. You just say all these words on black are called nouns. You see? And that's it. And then you give him one to read, and he will read la-ida, lid. Well, we could put that on the lid of the box, couldn't we? You see? Now, read this one, and the child reads ma-a-pa, map. You could go and put that on the map. And then another one, which is clock. Peg. Rod. Depends on your classroom. So he box, box, and he goes and puts that against the box. You see? Kahla ipa clip. Dustpan. Dustpan, dustpan. So you'll find you have lots more phonetic words around the room than you think. And when he's labelled everything, then he gathers them up and puts them back again. And the next day you might say to him, I wonder, are you going to read the nouns again? You see? So the word noun just becomes an ordinary household word. His mother comes and says, what did you do at school today? Well, I worked with the nouns. You know? And no problem. Well, perhaps before I put that out, I'll show you the verb. Oh, it's nice, too, to play a little game on the nouns. If you have the children waiting for a few minutes because their dinner isn't quite ready or the parents haven't come for them, they can sit in a circle and you can play the game in which you ask for something without mentioning what you want. You say, Jimmy, would you bring me? Bring me? Oh, bring it for me, Jimmy. And you don't say what it is. And the children very often begin guessing and bringing you things. And you would say, oh, no, I didn't want a book. No, thank you, I didn't want a box. You see, at last you have to mention what you want. I wanted the clock, or I wanted a pencil. So they realize that you can't talk about anything without saying its name. And the first time, you know, they, in great puzzlement, try and find you all these things. And Dr. Montessori used to say, give me, Mary, give me, give me. You see, at last she'd say, give me a kiss. You know. And well, now the verb. The colour there is red. We have a red box marked verb. And we put the lid in front of the box. And inside we have verbs that can be acted, written on red card. Red, you know, again, suits the verb. It's a very active colour, isn't it? And verb is action. And if you think, you could think of many kinetic words which the children could act. Tell me some. Yes, jump, skip, run, hop, sit, stand, clap, yes, wink, and so on. You'll probably, if without much trouble, you'll probably think of 20 or 30 again, you know? The more the better. And then you have the heading card which says verb, and you just show that to the child, and it's an unphonetic word, so you just tell him, this says verb. Verb. Could you say verb? Yes. And all the words on red are called verbs. And you put that up at the top of the table, you see. Now, let's see. Could you read that? And the child will read jump. Yes, that says jump. Could you stand up and jump? Now, we've done that one, so we put it in the lid, because we don't want to get it a second time. What about this one? Could you read that? Skip. Yes. Could you do that? Could you skip? It's marvellous for the children who need all this activity. What about this one? Sit. Oh, you're sitting already, aren't you? Sit. This one? Wink. Now, they often can't do that, and you have to show them. They always wink with both eyes. Well, you could do those, couldn't you? You could read them, and then do whatever the word tells you to do, and then put it in the box and take another. And this is very, very popular. You'll find it's always in use. But they do understand, you know, through the exercise that the verb is action. And I can never resist telling the story of my little Christopher, who was about 4 1/2, and one of the words said dust. You know? And, of course, it meant to take a duster and dust. And he came to me, and he said, look, that's quite wrong. So I said, well, what's wrong with it, Christopher? And he said, well, it says dust. and dust is what you find under the piano. And so dust ought to be on black. And he had realized the difference between a verb and a noun, you see. And nothing would satisfy him. He was very thrilled to find that you parse by function. He was very pleased to find that a word could be a noun or a verb. That interested him very much, but still he wanted the word dust on black. And so I wrote it out for him. I kept a white pencil in the classroom and wrote it for him on black. And the piano was in the hall, so he went out to put the dust on the dust under the piano. And he came back, and I've never seen any child so cross. He said, no dust. Plenty of dust under my piano at home. Plenty of dust. and he was this little boy who never let go, you know. And I'd hear him muttering all the rest of the morning. There's plenty of dust under my piano at home. And the school must have had an extra especially good sweep because there wasn't any dust to be found under the piano. So that's a very nice exercise, again, for phonetic reading and for beginning to understand the function of words. Now here we have a farm. Now this particular farm is an English farm. It is extremely nice because the animals have really been studied, and when you look at it they are very lifelike. You see the pig has a little curly tail, and all the little piglets do really look exactly like little piglets. They've studied the way the animal stands and what it does. They reproduce it very well indeed. I find it very good for the town children who don't know what the animals are like. See, there's the ram. And in this first box we will only have objects, animals whose names are phonetic. Now, here's a little girl, and she's feeding a little pink piglet. But you can call her Jill or Anne. You can give her a phonetic name. And here's the man carrying a sack. I've lost one or two things. I generally like to have two little kids. You see how it stands with its little tail straight up, this way a little kid stands. A cock and a hen. A cat and a kitten. A dog, a duck, and here I have a rabbit. I'm afraid I lost one of my rabbits. Oh, here's a duck, and then there are a lot of little ducklings. There are 4 pieces of stone wall that fit together and make what we call a PEN. What do you use that word? Yes. See, and if you like, you can put one of the animals inside it. You can have a little piglet in there. Now we have the nouns. You see the names of everything written on black card with a heading card that says noun. So you would sit next to your child and you could say, perhaps he knows that word noun by now, in which case he could tell you, but otherwise you would say, now if you remember that says noun, and all these words on black are called nouns. And then you would put that up at the top of the table. We imagine the child and the teacher sitting there. You give him a word to read, pa'ika, la'eta, piglet, and he puts it by the piglet. Then the next word, ram. And if he doesn't know what a ram is, well, it's very nice for him to learn. Kitten. Paiga, pig. And the child reads the words and matches a word to each animal. Rabbit. Ka'aka, cock. Ka'ida, kid. The aka, ducklings. Pen, hen, dog. I'm not stopping to read them. The child would sound each one out. Jill, piglets. Oh, there's the man, cat, duck. So everything gets a name. And that's how it's used at first. You would only have the nouns in the box, and the child would take it whenever he liked. He would read the noun card, put it at the top of the table, and read the words phonetically and match them to the objects. So he can have this as soon as he's able to read the longer phonetic words. It's parallel to that part of the reading scheme. And he does begin to associate all the words on black as a group. And he knows they're called nouns. Now, is there anything you want to ask about that?
You were teaching us, and they're associating the noun with the color. Is there any problem as you transition over to black print on white paper?
No, I've never had any problem at all. Just as this little boy, who was only about 4.5, could understand that dust was a noun and ought to be written on black. You see, he had understood the function, hadn't he? Or he wouldn't have been able to say that. Yes. No, it doesn't. I've never had a problem.
You would begin this then as the child enters the blue material?
Yes, as soon as he can manage. Yes, as soon as he can manage, which he does practically at once, to read those longer phonetic words, this will be given parallel to that blue material. And the other two pieces I've shown you, the nouns for the classroom and the verb, will be given at that stage too. And they're very popular, especially those verbs that you read and act. You know? And if it's a very noisy one, clapping your hands, and some children are vigorous, I say to them, you always can go outside to clap because it disturbs us, you know. So they go and race down the hall and come back. That is... Well, now the adjective. The adjective, the colour is royal blue.
Would you put the verbs with that before you went to the adjective?
No, because in order to build a good phrase, you must have the or a. But you can play a little game to introduce the adjective again. Like you can, with your children, when you've got a few minutes to spare, you can say, someone bring me a book. Oh, I didn't want a green book. I wanted a pink book. Or bring me a box. I didn't want the square box. I wanted a rectangular box, you know. And so their attention is drawn to adjectives. Now we have 2 packs of royal blue cards, on each of which are adjectives, and each of which has a heading card that says adjective. On one pack, we have the demonstrative adjective the, or the numerical adjective a. you see, throughout. And on in the other pack, we will have adjectives that are applicable to the animals, that are suitable for use with the farm. And we just take a heading card and show it to the child, and we say, this says adjective, and all the words on blue are called adjectives. Could you say that word, adjective? No? Yes, adjective. They are very fond of strange words, you know. And in here, all these words are called adjectives. Mm-hmm. So we have those two cards. That says adjective and this says adjective. Mm-hmm. And then we would give him one of these words, you see, to read, any of them, you see. And if he read big, now which of all these things do you think is big? Now it's his choice. You don't argue about it. If he says the man is big, you take the demonstrative adjective the, and you build the phrase the big man. But if he says the ram is big, then you build the phrase the big ram. And then you take another of these, strong. You let the child read it, strong. Now, which of all these things do you think is strong? Well, you probably say the strong man. All right, you say the strong man. And you build that phrase, the strong man. You see? What in a twin? Well, where have we got to? I ought to have twin kids. So then we would say twin kids. But anyway, well, having lost one little kid, I haven't got a twin kid. Fat, the fat duck. Six. Oh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's 6 piglets. So you can. It's rather nice if you have more than one type of adjective. It's easy to have the numerical adjective. Pink, the pink pig. And once a child understands, you can let him go on by himself. You see? Pet, the pet rabbit. Because it's his own choice, and different children apply different adjectives to the different animals. Soft, the soft kitten. Black, the black cat. Spotted dog. And so on. See? So the child has to discriminate in his use of adjectives. And you give him as many adjectives as you can think of that are phonetic and which are applicable to the farm. And very often, you know, children work together. And 2 children will do this together, and I find they have arguments. I want the man to be strong, but I want the man to be big. And they'll come to you for a simple thing like that, and they'll say, which is he? You see, and you could quite well say, well, he could be both. You see, you could have the big, strong man. And then they realize that anything can have more than one quality. Or they'll say, I want the man to be strong, and Jimmy wants the ram to be strong. Well, they could both be strong. Let's write another card. You see. and so on. So there is this discussion that takes place, and they do become very aware of choosing the best adjective for the purpose. It's a great help. I find this is an enormous help to composition, because when they begin to write compositions later on, they are used to picking the best adjective. You see, deliberately choosing the adjective, and they are used to using many adjectives. Whereas with most children's composition, they will find they use just only the same adjective over and over. It was a nice day, I had a nice ice cream, we had a nice ride on the elephant, you know. And here they are very aware of adjectives. Another thing that is interesting is that the color does show the syntax. You see, in English, the adjective nearly always comes in front of the noun. The exceptions are after the verb to be, or in poetry, a poet often transposes the adjective and noun for the sake of euphony. And I've had a child as young as just 5 years come to me with a poem in which the adjective was put after the noun, and she has pointed this fact out to me. You see, because they do become very aware of language and how it's used. Well, now, after they have had this for a time, then you can add the verbs, and you have your verbs that can be used with the farm written on red. You would have your verb card, which says verb. They've already had the name verb with the verbs which they acted, so perhaps they know the word and can tell you, and otherwise you tell them that, remember, that says verb, and all the cards on red you remember are verbs. And that just goes up at the top of the table, you see, and they can read a verb. You see. Read this one. Grunts. Oh, the pink pig grunts. Now we're getting a sentence. Runs. The spotted dog runs. Has. Oh, Jill has a piglet. You see? And so in this way, quacks, fat duck quacks. And it's quite nice because you see a lot of the verbs are applicable only really to animals, aren't they? Like quacks, pecks, or the hen pecks. You can see she's pecking her food up. Helps. Oh, helps. Well, you can have the spotted dog runs, or we could have the spotted dog helps the man, or we can say the big strong man helps one of the animals. You see? And you can also have it so that they get the adjective after the verb to be, is. You see? We can say the kitten is soft. So that they see that. And so, again, you give them as many verbs as you can think of, which are phonetic, but which are also applicable to the farm animals.
Do you do any explaining about is and was and has, and the fact that they've only done action verbs to this point, haven't they?
It really depends. You are there to help any child who needs help. A lot of the children don't need it because it's the language they're using, but in some cases, if they are not sure and they come to you, you just show them anything that they need to be shown.
If they would put then the man is and leave it that
Or they never do. They will put the man is fat, or they might put the strong man is big.
You were saying earlier that it's important to use capitalization and punctuation. Does this cause any
Well, here it's almost impossible to,
Yeah, I know, but I just
because they're building phrases and then they're building sentences. This is the one case when we really can't do that. This is used with the farm, I find. Because if we did, you see, they might, if you had, say, Jill has the piglet, you wouldn't want them to take her that with a capital.
Right.
So it's just about impossible to follow that.
Do the kids ever notice that, though?
I've not had them. No, I've never had that happen. Because they're still pretty young. It'd be quite interesting. You might find that somebody noticed it one day, but I never have had that come up. Because they are very observant. It takes a little while to build up the sentences, of course. They've used the adjectives for some time before you introduce the verb. And you yourself, in talking about the work, do just use those words, adjective, noun, verb. You see, so that they just talk about them as easily as they talk about anything else. You're using it, aren't you, Mrs. Boyd?
Yes, we've used it. We had great success last year in one of our first grade classes with going this far.
They go, yes. Of course, I mean, we say it's ideal to do it between 4.5, 5.5, just as we find that children learn to read so easily at that age. But if you haven't done it at that age, then you do it at a later age. You see, and it's a very nice way of learning, introducing grammar, 7, 8, or even 9, if you haven't had any grammar. And naturally, a lot of the city children don't know the names of the animals or don't know what the animals are like, and I find it's a very educative piece of material for them, just because the animals are so like the real ones. I think you've not got it with your children.
I don't have that one.
I think they would love him. Well, I think that's as far as we'll go this morning. That's a lot for you to think about, isn't it? And
Just
then,
at this point, I'd just like to say to the staff that we do have the farms, I do have the pen and the ink, and so they may create their farms this afternoon if they want.
oh, wonderful. That will be good. You notice here that the writing has got a little smaller, because so many of the words like duckling and piglet you can't get onto if you're using the... so it doesn't matter. You can use a slightly smaller writing or you can use the big writing. It doesn't matter. And it'd be helpful to make it while you've got the material to copy. And I can see how you write as well. I'm afraid I've been using this for a whole semester, and some of when I'm using it with a class, always 1 or 2 words seem to get lost, or 1 or 2 little things get lost. And so if there's a word missing, you mustn't mind. I haven't had time to rewrite them. I used to have one black piglet, but I can't get it anymore.